afternoon. The board workshop for March 9, 2021 is now in session. Pam, roll call, please.
Mrs. Belford?
Present.
Ms. McDougall?
Present.
Mrs. Jenkins?
Present.
Mr. Susan?
Present.
And Mrs. Campbell?
Present in spirit.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Of the United States of America, to the republic for which one nation under God, liberty and justice for all.
Okay, our first order of business this afternoon is on charter school applicants. Jane Klein, Assistant Superintendent of Elementary Leading and Learning, will make the introductions.
Good afternoon, Board, and thank you for allowing us to come back before most of you again with the Florida High School for Accelerated Learning. Presenting today will be Ron Goss, the Board Chair, as well as member of his team. So, Mr. Goss, proceed.
Thank you very much. Everyone can hear me okay? Great. So, good afternoon, Dr. Mullins, members of the school board, and supporting staff. We are the founding board members, to my left, Stanley Briz and Judy Blanchard, of a proposed new dropout prevention recovery school named the Florida High School for Accelerated Learning of Brevard County. Our mission is different, perhaps, and our focus is different than maybe perhaps some of the other charter schools that may have approached Brevard County. Our mission is to help at-risk and low-performing students graduate high school and prepare them for post-secondary success. Thanks for having us back again. It was just about a year, well, it was 1 year ago, almost to the day. My times have changed in a year. You folks feel like you're a million miles away this year as opposed to our cozy little room last year when we were probably just all heard about COVID right at that time. And I think it was the last, we were talking before we got together today, and that was our last public meeting that we had before COVID really impacted all of our communities. We have an updated charter school presentation proposal. So after our meeting a year ago, Ms. Archer and her staff and the department heads asked us to meet with them and work with them to create a stronger application. And as an organization, we are very interested in a strong partnership with Brevard Schools, and we're very thankful for that opportunity to sit down with department heads, with Ms. Archer, and work together to strengthen and focus our application. I would like to introduce my fellow board members. All three of us are Brevard County residents, and our interest in serving this type of student comes from our professional and volunteer work throughout Brevard County as well as throughout Florida. It's been our collective years of experience working with students that convinced us that this program would be a perfect replication option for our hometown Brevard County schools. Brevard, like many other communities around the state and across the country, there are many students who need another option to help them graduate. Our governing board and support team will provide substantial direction, guidance, and oversight for the policies, procedures, budget, and overall direction of our proposed school. We fully understand that as the governing body, we will be responsible for ensuring compliance with the terms of our charter with the district should we be allowed to move forward. My name is Ron Goss. I live in Cocoa Beach, and I'll be serving as the board chair for the proposed new school. I retired as state director for workforce development for the state of Florida about 2 years ago. I've spent my entire career working with at-risk youth, and I'm pleased to introduce two of my co-workers, folks that I've known a very long time, and they've been selected to join our governing body, our board, because of their passion and their commitment to this population. So Stanley Briz on my left is our board vice chair. He's worked for Eckerd Youth Alternatives, Eckerd Connects, since 2007. Stanley has created, directed, and operates school-based prevention programs, a mentoring children of prisoners program, supervised visitation services, and homelessness housing supportive services. He currently oversees the Brevard Prevention Coalition and is chairperson of the Brevard Opioid Abuse Task Force. His dedication and service to the youth of Brevard County is extensive and ongoing. And on my right is Judy Blanchard, and Judy and I have known each other through many years through Career Source, through our connection with Career Source. And she is the Secretary Treasurer of Career Source Brevard, has spent her professional life in business management, financial analysis, marketing, business operations in the aerospace industry here locally. Ms. Blanchard currently serves as Vice President for Industry Relations for Career Source Brevard, oversees the development and delivery of a myriad of programs designed to address the workforce needs of Brevard's employers. I'm going to turn this over to Stanley to talk a little bit more about our target population and the need in Brevard County.
Thank you very much, Ron. And Secretary Treasurer of our board is Judy. Well, and I thank you very much for introducing me as well. I'm going to go through our target population, and in the interest of time, it will be some fast and quick data points, but I'll try to make it as pleasing to hear as possible. So we're applying for one dropout prevention and recovery high school to serve students who have already dropped out of high school or who are at risk of dropping out. That's our general population target. There are 6 schools that have a combined total of 844 non-graduates if you look at 2018, 2019, and 2020, and those particular high school cohorts. That's Bayside, Eau Gallie, Heritage, Melbourne, Palm Bay, and West Shore. So we believe that these district high schools would significantly benefit from our non-traditional approach to help those students move forward in their academic careers. We also recognize that students are not graduating or are dropping out through no fault or failure of the public school system in general. These are students who just have a lot of competing life responsibilities, obstacles, and priorities. You add to that COVID, the mental health strain that has been put on all of them over the past year and their families, and you can see the need for more options outside of the traditional learning environment. We expect the profile of the typical enrolling student to be, here come the list and the data, but average enrollment at 17.5 years old, 17 and a half years old. They have to be more than 2 years behind their expected grade level, earned less than half, so about 11 credits toward graduation, be performing at the 4th grade reading level, so that's 95% below grade level, be performing at the 5th grade math level, that's 91% below grade level. 40% will be pregnant, parenting, or responsible for the care of a sibling. We've just seen that in experience. Also expect 44% to be working part-time or full-time jobs to support themselves or their families. So unlike a typical charter school, we really are focusing on a population that has challenges as opposed to those that, I always use that illustration of like taking the cream of the crop and trying to move them toward charter school. We're really trying to help those that we know have the potential to be better and do better. With 844 non-graduates identified over the last 3 years in that target region who have dropped out, who are about to, our proposed charter school we feel is perfectly positioned to partner with Brevard Public Schools to provide an innovative and non-traditional option for certain students in partnership with what you have existing already in your infrastructure for helping students that are struggling. All elements of this model, from the facility layout, staffing, scheduling, and curriculum, are designed to respond to the needs of a student who has dropped out or who is dangerously close to dropping out of school. I want to talk a little bit about the academic model. Our academic model is based on replication schools currently operating in 5 districts and different districts of the state, and at 15 high school campuses across Florida with a 12 or more year track record of successful outcomes. We'll implement a blended instructional model that includes computer-based instruction as well as instructor-led, certified instructor-led, face-to-face, full classroom, individual and small group intervention services, which I think is very, very important. The blended model design is founded on significant research that supports the model's efficacy in keeping students in school, moving them towards graduation, and assisting them in post-secondary planning. In a traditional classroom model, any missed classroom time can be virtually impossible to catch up on. Because of our self-paced, mastery-based model with flexible scheduling, our students can always pick up right where they left off so that when life circumstances impact their attendance, they don't fall even further behind. Also very important. Students and parents will have access to an individualized success dashboard that allows them to view and track their progress toward graduation as they move through the coursework. They can also set short-term and long-term goals, track post-secondary exploration and planning steps, and monitor their skills and growth. So that's just some of the high-level points of why we're excited about this model, and we think it'll be an excellent supplement to what you have existing here, so we can partner with you to just help the students be positioned better for success. So next, I'd like to turn this presentation over to Judy to talk more about the student support model.
That, can you hear me? The academic needs that Ms. Stanley just discussed, we understand that each of these students are going to come to us with significant social and emotional challenges. And, we anticipate that they're going to be responsible for either children of their own or younger siblings, especially now with the effects of the pandemic. Many more are now responsible for taking care of children that are in their homes, as well as working. Stanley said that we expect that 44% of the students will have some type of part-time employment. And you can only imagine now, too, with parents losing their jobs, the responsibilities of bringing income into a family is probably even higher than that. So to be able to address these needs, our school will have a licensed clinical social worker that will be augmented with graduate interns from the local universities to offer individual student counseling, crisis intervention, basic needs case management, grief counseling, and offering also through our community partners social services support, not only to the student but also their family. So upon entry, each student will be administered a comprehensive psychosocial assessment that will help to identify the barriers to success, and from there a support plan put into place. In the work that I do in the world of the workforce, I can tell you that removing significant barriers to success is one of the most difficult things that we battle. But just like in employment, also in the world of academia, to be successful, truly successful, we need to address those barriers, and this model allows for that. We'll also focus on post-secondary transition and planning, making sure that students have an opportunity to relate instruction and academic learning to the real world of work. So we will employ a full-time career counselor that works on identifying competencies, aptitude, employment opportunities in the world of work, as well as looking at post-secondary education opportunities and college applications with each of these students. So one of the things too, when I mentioned, the challenges and the barriers now being even more prevalent because of the pandemic, I'd be remiss if I didn't somewhat brag on our service provider because of their current schools. Once the pandemic hit, within 48 hours, they went from literally over a weekend, a bricks and mortar school, into being able to offer virtual services for all of the students, had teachers into virtual training. And again, we were very well positioned for this because of that blended model, mastery-based, self-paced. The students were already used to having online instruction. And then we had not only our licensed clinical social services support, but teachers calling and checking in with these students almost on a daily basis. All right, Ron, back to you.
Thank you, Judy. I'd like to talk to the audience a little bit about why we selected ALS as our educational service provider. So just to refresh, the three of us up here, we're the governing board. We are who contracts with the district. And so the relationship, the flow of money, all of the things that will happen between the district and the proposed school will come to the nonprofit board. We have a choice in who we would choose as our educational service provider, our ESP. And we have chosen Accelerated Learning Systems. So because of their history and their performance, not only in Florida, but in other states as well. So they're a leader with their well-defined model and their support structure, which Judy just talked about, which is key to this population's success. We want to ensure that our model or our program would be very successful in Brevard, and it was extremely helpful for us to meet again with Ms. Archer and the staff to kind of strengthen up our proposal. Some of the key outcomes that were very appealing to us and why we think we have great confidence in the partnership is that our schools, our ALS replication model, has a student stability rate of 80%, which is an exceptional outcome considering the transient and unstable nature of the population that we plan to serve, at-risk, low-performing students. And also, we have success now, a track record in this past year of reaching them during the COVID pandemic. 64% of the students in ALS managed schools have demonstrated more than a year's growth or learning gain on state math or early learning assessments, ELA assessments. This is compared to just 41% of other students in student improvement rated, SIR, SIR rated schools. So our schools are 64% compared to the rest of the state at 41%. Again, these are reasons why we've chosen ALS. Consistently positive programming and compliance reviews by the school district authorizers. The highest rating of commendable on Florida's alternative accountability model in all of the schools that ALS oversees. 100% have reached this commendable rating in Florida compared to just 16% of alternative schools statewide. Long-term contract renewals, so in the other authorizing districts, our schools have been renewed 10 to 15-year contracts. And most importantly, we believe, or equally importantly, is our post-secondary outcomes. 41% of our graduates confirmed that they're enrolled in college or technical school, 4% enlisted in the military, and 45% are gainfully employed. So we do statistics on students that leave our schools. Now they're coming to us grade levels behind, low performing. This is a recovery program. They're gaining, they're graduating, they're getting a high school diploma, not a GED, or we're a regular school in the district. And we're tracking them to see if they go to work, they go to college, or they go into the military. So I just want to close, and we're doing good on time here, I believe. I think we're really, really good. Our closing is that we just really hope to operate in a symbiotic relationship with Brevard Public Schools. And we want to, in alignment with the purpose and intent of the charter schools, we want to be a partner to a very specific group of students with whom the school district could perhaps use our support through alternative options. So we all know there's students need more than one way to walk across the stage, and we're here to talk to you today about an alternative way to walk across the stage to graduate. That's a blended model combined with a lot of support services. Our vision for this relationship matches what our ESP and the other local boards have accomplished. We plan to hold our school and our managing ESP, which is ALS, to a high degree of accountability and ensuring compliance with all state and local expectations. Achievement of outcomes, and report to you regularly on the success in doing so. We are hopeful for an opportunity to work closely with your staff, and we've already seen that great relationship in this past year, with your leadership and with your guidance teams at your high schools to ensure that everyone has a solid understanding of what we offer, the outcomes that we plan to achieve, the program components that can help respond to the needs of a defined group of struggling students. In this short amount of time, we've given you a high-level description of the academic and support model that has proven successful in helping at-risk students graduate from high schools. Stanley and Judy and I are a local board. We plan to add more local people to our nonprofit board. Again, we're excited about this opportunity to bring a much-needed opportunity to the special student population that we plan to serve. So thank you for your time and consideration of our proposal.
Thank you all for joining us today. Do any board members have any questions?
I just have one.
Ms. McDougall?
Thank you for the presentation. I might have missed this. So is there an expected graduation time period they're in school with you, in classroom? Like, do they graduate in a year? Do they graduate in 2 years? Is it open-ended? How long does it typically take for a student to get their diploma?
It's an open-ended type program, so that now what we have done in other campuses around the state is we hold several graduations a year, and students get to participate in the graduation ceremony, but they complete school when they achieve the credits and graduate at that point. Does that answer your question?
Yes, but I'm going to jump on it. What is typically, or the average that you see that it takes somebody to go through your program? Is there an average at all for some of our students, for some of the students that you have?
An average length of time?
Yes.
About 3 years.
Okay.
Three
Yeah.
semesters, excuse me, yeah, three semesters. But please remember, 98% of the students that come to us are more than 2 years behind their cohort. And so we're really focusing on that individual plan for them to be able to reach the graduation point. So when you think about 2% are probably on cohort, last year for those students in the schools in Florida, we had 24% graduate on time with their cohort. So we think that's a huge accomplishment considering, the level of credits that they come to us with.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions or comments? Mr. Susan?
I wanted to say that I truly believe that you guys as a board are probably one of the more qualified boards that I've ever seen come through with your years of experience in workforce. You're over there at CareerSource.
Thank you.
And your work with a lot of our dependency issues has been tremendous. And I really appreciate you guys coming forward to work with the kids that I feel are a big need in our district. Where my questions come to is in relations to your managing company and some of the stuff that they bring over, right? So I pulled ASI's financials from multiple other schools, districts, and stuff like that. And right about, the average that I was seeing is basically management fees in the, as comparative to salary for people at the schools. Do you have an idea of what their management fee is going to be broken down on the FTE or anything like that? Can you explain to that? Like if the FTE is 100%, what percent goes to, and they've got it conduced down to like management fee, national cost. There's a couple of pieces in there. If you guys could speak to that, that's all.
I'll attempt to answer your question, Matt. And
Thanks.
thank you for the question. So the arrangement that we plan to have with ALS schools is that nearly all of the FTE will go to the management company, and they will pay 100% of all the bills. So we're a nonprofit board, volunteers. We're not paid. We don't have any interest in this. We're not renting buildings. They're not buying books from us. There's no relationship at all other than our commitment to this population. So 97% of the FTE goes to the management company. 3% goes to the nonprofit board. However, in observing this, and I've been on the board volunteering prior to moving over to Brevard County. I've been on the board here of ALS schools for 12 years. And what I've seen is that when you're first starting out a school like this, everything is dependent on FTEs and enrollments. And so there's a lot of money invested by by ALS to get these schools off the ground. And that includes all aspects of salaries, facilities, books, computers, and so on. We, as a board, believe that we don't want to be consumed with trying to run around getting financing for all of this kind of stuff and just, again, not running an efficient, effective school right out of the gate. And so, we've looked at this model. The most important thing to really, I believe, that because I've seen it firsthand and in my experience, we control the budget. We approve the budget. The board approves our group approves their budget. They present a budget to us. We ask questions. We hire our own independent CPA, our own independent attorney. We meet together in our board meetings to go over what the staff has presented to us as the governing board. We make decisions, recommendations. They go back to the well and they fix things. The other thing is that if they're not doing the job, if they're not meeting the standards that are in our contract with you as the authorizing district, we put them on notice. We terminate their agreement. We can terminate their agreement with 30 days notice. We have to give them time for, to remedy, of course. However, when you control the money and the money comes to us and not to ALS, we have a big lever in terms of getting them to do things that we believe are good for our students. So that is why we have, we firmly believe in this model of the way that the funds go. We don't need the money. We're not paying any of the bills. All we're doing is our attorney and our accountant.
No, and I appreciate that. And I one of the things that I see in this is an amazing opportunity, because this is the first type that I've seen in this scope that comes across, and I think it's amazing. One of the, and I'm not saying this about the current company that's making the application, but just from one fellow board member to another, there are a series of things that management companies will do to put handcuffs onto charter schools to control that flow, like leases where they purchase the property and then coming back. Just be aware of all of those things to make sure that anything that you guys engage in doesn't create the handcuffs that then end up taking the money out of our school district that should go to our kids into somewhere else. I think you guys are amazing. I would love to work with you in any concept you could do. I'd actually sit down with your workforce board and try to help you get kids these jobs. I mean, this is a big deal. I just don't want to see it get utilized, and I don't know anything about them. They're amazing. They're in Orange County, they're in Palm Beach County, they're in North Carolina. I looked them all up. They've got some good background. I just want you guys, from a fellow board member to another, to be prepared for that. Those leases, where who's buying the furniture, make sure that they're not all conglomerated together and you're getting the best prices together. That's it.
Yes, each nonprofit, has it's again, it's its own entity, and it has its own contract with the authorizing district. The monies aren't blended of any of the 3% monies at all. We pump that back into the local district, pump it back right into Brevard County.
Oh, no, not yours. I was saying theirs. Like school district administration fee, 5% under 250 enrollment, management company fee, there's a national fee on a couple of them. Just be prepared. That's all. Make sure that our kids in our county that are paying our taxes get our money. And that's all I care about. I know there's got to be a fee that goes somewhere, but let's focus on our kids. That's all.
I appreciate that. And to your point, we actually did have a discussion with them about that very topic. As you mentioned, like the leases, furniture, and making sure there's that, I don't know if that's the right term of severability, or independent. They're independent from one another, to make sure there's nothing.
Yeah, make sure that they don't hand into a contract where you're paying excessive amounts in leases because they fronted you guys the property to go purchase. That's another hook.
Correct.
So we just see it in some of them, not here, because Ms. Archer keeps everybody accountable. I'm saying that I've seen it in other parts of the state, and I was just trying to avoid it here, and you guys are amazing. So I'm here for you. If you need me, send me an email. Thank you, Ms. Belford.
You're welcome. Ms. Jenkins?
So I just want to start off saying I appreciate the ingenuity piece of this charter. I appreciate the unique population that you're targeting. And Mr. Briz, I've heard about you. I've met you before really, really quickly. I've heard about you, tremendous things about you, your work with our students and adults with substance abuse. And I'm really excited that you're a part of this. That gives me a lot of confidence. No offense to anybody else. I don't know you yet. But I do have two questions. So I'm going to piggyback off of Matt's question. And I guess it's not necessarily a question to you guys directly, but kind of just an education question here. So if a charter school's management company is doing those purchasing of, I'm just going to use an example of the furniture and stuff, and our charter was to close, that then puts the district in what position? And I'm kind of asking this as like a risk ratio question for the district as a whole.
Mr. Gibbs, would you like to address that since you have some experience?
Yeah, anything that they purchase with public funds comes back to school to the school district. So like we closed Legacy, all of their furniture that was purchased for the school came back to the school district. And we had to send people to collect it.
I think she's specifically stating to liability on existing leases and.
No.
monetary?
So no.
Okay.
So you're right, Mr. Gibbs. So what I was asking was, so if the money goes from us to the charter, then to the management company to make all the purchasing, is it still the property of
Yeah,
Brevard
anything
Public Schools?
purchased with public funds comes
Okay.
back to the school district.
Okay, I was just curious. And then to you guys, I do have a question. So you did kind of touch on that social emotional piece, which is obviously a huge part for this charter. And so I have a question. So if our students, I believe you said all of the students were getting a psychosocial assessment to kind of see where their needs are. How exactly would you be addressing that, other than the social worker and those interns that are in there? But if there's something really specific, for instance, substance abuse, are there certain nonprofits, companies, things like that you're going to be reaching out to? How are you going to support those students?
Judy or Stanley, I had a hard time hearing the question. So maybe-
Yes, I think
Between Judy and
I
I,
can
Judy-
answer that one for
Go
you.
ahead,
So,
Judy.
absolutely. So what we'll do is have a referral partnership with our community-based organizations and social services system. And, and I can tell you in CareerSource, we have the same partnerships. And so one of the things that I bring to the board is a direct relationship with over 25 of those agencies here locally as well.
And
Thank
I can piggyback on that as well. I wear probably too many hats, but have my ECHRD hat, and also I'm the executive director of Brevard Prevention Coalition, which pretty much has every social services and substance misuse treatment agency in our region as a member agency, and I plan to fully support the school and supplement services and activities toward that.
Thanks.
Anyone else have questions, comments?
Yes, Ms. Belford, if I may.
Sure, Ms. Campbell?
So first of all, I wanted to just say I was one of the things the ALS team, they had invited, I don't know if anybody else was able to take advantage of this, but they invited me over to visit Econ River High School, which is one of their charters in Orange County. And I was really excited to see, among other things, the great relationship that their schools in Orange County have with the school district. They really have a true partnership. And so that's really exciting for me. The flexibility for our students to be able to go either in the morning or the evening and coming in at all the different times of the year, and the great supports they put around them, regarding transportation, social workers, meeting their needs of their family or whatever it may be, and then also the connections to future opportunities. But so I guess my question is, and I think I already know the answer to this from my visit there in Orlando, or Kissimmee, wherever it was. But one of the things that makes this work is the partnership with the schools in the area. So what is that going to look like, to be able to catch those students who are falling through the cracks? What is that going to look like? What is that, what are those connections going to look like for those 6 schools or any of the schools in the area to make contact with those students and let them know this new opportunity? What would that look like from y'all's end?
I can take a start at that, and then I'm sure Judy and Stanley will jump in. Again, I have observed firsthand how the schools that are around the ALS school, vis-a-vis the sending schools, the observation that I have is that the staff, the teachers, the guidance counselors, the principal, everybody wants to try to see these young adults be successful. What happens is that, as we all said, that life gets in the way. They're supporting families. They're working because they have to, support a mom or whatever the situation might be. And so, regretfully, they can't continue in the mainstream school. So it is the schools that, know that our school's awesome, and they want to be able to help their kids be successful. And so we get a lot of referrals from the sending schools that help individuals that are a perfect match for the profile of our students. So it's really about all these people coming together, the school district, the teachers, the guidance counselors, the principals, and the staff at ALS schools coming together to help a student have an individual success and do whatever it takes to help that student graduate.
I want to add to that too. We also want to plug into your current system that you've seen has been working. So you have your alternative learning centers, you have your adult ed programs. So we want to be sure to know that our system of getting referrals from those sending schools plugs into what works best here. And I know there's a referral process already in place on how you identify students at those schools that need that. The key here is option and choice. So our school might be better suited for them, those students that are in that category, than some other options they may have. And we want to make sure the district staff is informed about that, since we'll be adding ourselves as a partner school in your district. So they'll know the
Thank
proper
you.
choice. You're welcome.
Ms. Jenkins?
Yeah, I'm sorry. There was one more question I forgot to ask. So how are you going to address this is an assumption, but it's kind of a pattern that we have. So most of these students are probably going to struggle with transportation and access. So how are you guys going to address the transportation issue for these students that really need this type of setting to actually get there?
Well, I'll start off, and then
Yeah.
you guys can add anything I forget to add. Transportation in Brevard is always a problem, and I'll be honest about that. And so these are the same students that will probably have the same challenges getting to an alternative learning center or getting to adult ed, and they meet it. They find a way to make it work if that's what they have to do to make their credits as well. But we are also prepared to provide transportation assistance to those individual students. So funding for bus passes, leveraging resources. We do that within Eckerd with my dependency program, with our homelessness program, people with no transportation, as well as I run a program in 6 of your schools already as well, where we supplement those things to help them with those transportation. But we want to be creative and innovative as well, of what's going to help them get there. And then, of course, we want to help build up those skills where these are students we're preparing to be adults in life. So how are you going to get to school? How are you going to get to work? So it's going to be a blended approach to that. Anybody want to add? Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Dr. Mullins?
Thank you, Ms. Belford. I too want to acknowledge, your interest in supporting students in our community who, in many cases, may be on a path of some of the most at-risk circumstances to not graduate, and acknowledge the uniqueness of the students you are interested in. But I'm the superintendent of Brevard Public Schools, and I can't pass a conversation like this to also acknowledge and credit the programs and services we provide our students. And it's to no discredit of your suggestion, because lots of terms and phrases have been thrown out, like a licensed mental health counselor, a social worker, a workforce coordinator. None of those individuals or services or opportunities for students as proposed through this school are absent from our current schools and programs. Our students have those supports and services. We have adult education. We have 6 different adult education sites, some of them on our own campuses, so accessibility and opportunity for flexible scheduling in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening already exist. And I'm not suggesting that they don't have a quality proposal. All I want our viewing public and community to understand is this is not necessarily a place and space that Brevard Public Schools isn't already serving our kids, because we take as seriously, we are as committed to serving every student with excellence as the standard. And our kids who come to us with whatever circumstances, our counselors, our social workers, our licensed mental health counselors, our contracted services for mental health follow-up with not only the student but with the family, our transportation services will all surround our kids to find the greatest opportunity and path to success. So please don't take offense to my comment. It is, we have men and women who are champions, literally in some cases giving the shirt off their back to help a child, help a student overcome a circumstance of, the list is endless, to be successful and so on. And that will never change regardless of what other opportunity or service or so on comes alongside. And we will, at the end of the day, Brevard's kids are all of our kids. And we will serve them to every last length that we can in partnership with anybody to ensure that they find a path to success and a future of opportunity that is far brighter and exceeds whatever they may have imagined on their own. But I'm the proud superintendent of Brevard Public Traditional Schools, and I couldn't pass up this conversation and say, we're working really hard for our kids, and someone who had only heard that part of the conversation might leave it otherwise thinking, oh, well, Brevard Public Schools doesn't serve kids in those circumstances, which I would suggest is nothing further from the truth. So.
And no offense taken whatsoever. We agree with that 100%. It's we want to supplement and not supplant. We want to increase and expand what is already being done the best way we can for more options. So we appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Mullins. We're really looking at, and this is hopefully we've conveyed this in our speech, our presentation, that the best way to help all the students in Brevard is through a symbiotic relationship where we can partner and utilize the strengths of these collective amazing organizations, and again to fulfill the mission to serve every student with excellence as the standard. And I hope we didn't convey that that we. And again, this is important for the public that's listening, that that these services do exist, and we're looking to come alongside and be a partner and be a resource for a specific group of low-performing students that are behind, so that they too have a chance at post-secondary success.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Mullins, for that. Ms. Campbell, did I hear you trying to speak?
I just said here, here.
Okay. Perfect. All right. With that, Stanley, if I could, since I'm not going to have an opportunity to grab you before you leave because of the way things are scheduled, would you please give me a call sometime in the near future? Totally unrelated to the charter.
Absolutely.
But need to touch base with you on some things.
I am at your disposal.
Thanks. Okay. Next, we are going to hear from General Counsel Gibbs, who will provide us with an update on legal services.
All right, good afternoon. Here to talk about the legal services update for the last year.
You didn't bring Valerie.
But Valerie is in the back room. She might be eating if she wants to come out. We've been quite busy this morning.
Quite all right. You don't have to come, Valerie, if you don't want to. We don't want to interrupt your meal.
So the legal services update's pretty short. It is COVID and we're done, so we can leave now, all right?
Okay. Great job, Paul.
Mr. Funny Guy.
Right?
But, so I started January of 2020, right after spring break came back, and I had I had a couple months till March, relatively normalcy. And my goals for my first year were to kind of observe the district, how the legal processes worked within the school district, keep business moving. I didn't want to hold anything up, avoid any major litigation missteps, and then correct the critical issues so that we didn't hit a litigation misstep somewhere. And as we know, once March came and spring break hit, COVID kind of derailed all operations and nothing was normal anymore. So, but when we looked back,
this is the 2-year comparison between the year before I got here and the year after I got here. I'm not going to say these agreements are 100% because I did not know I was supposed to CC Juanita so that she could track all of the contracts until probably several months after I had started. So the contracts might be a little bit off, but overall we're pretty consistent from year to year. Total policies reviewed. The next slide will have that broken down a little bit more. The legal memoranda, we're still right on pace. Where you might see some changes are the ethics complaints and the whistleblowers actually went considerably down. So I don't know if COVID had anything to do with that, with our operations getting upended a little bit for at least 2020. But we did go down. In-house litigation was stayed the same. Expulsions, we had a considerable amount. I'm going to say that that's most likely attributable to COVID. And so far, Stephanie Sullivan and her group has done an excellent job at resolving those before they come to the board this year as well. Garnishment cases are still flying through. I was on a call this morning. I got an hour's notice for a garnishment hearing with the judge. So we had a hearing this morning on a garnishment. So they are still rolling in as we speak. We had the same amount of bid protests. So far, no DOA hearings or requests. So, yep, we can knock on that wood. We've been pretty good over the past year. ADA accommodation requests are, still fairly low overall for the district. We didn't get any. Their expulsions, you can see on there, are pretty low. And the EEOC complaints are still fairly low. We did have a couple new litigations that came through over the past year. Anybody have questions on those data before we move on?
I just have to go on record that if all of a sudden we have a spike, I want it be reflected that general counsel jinxed us. It was not a reflection of the superintendent. So it's all on you, Mr. Gibbs.
It's all on Valerie. Valerie actually said we were extremely quiet, like at a meeting one morning, and
she can't
after
get past that comment either. We've all given her a hard time about that.
It has been nonstop. So
I have a question.
Yeah.
So the ethics complaints and like the whistleblower claims and all of that, who's allowed to see that?
Yep, you can get it if you want.
Okay.
Usually they come in. Most of the ones we receive in legal aren't really an ethics or a whistleblower, and they're more of like an employee complaint. Somebody's complaining against an employee, and we usually just refer those to HR for investigation. That's, since I've been here, that's been the case. I did handle, there was a couple of issues that Amy had handled and had, come back up, and some people followed up that I had to follow up on, but we haven't had any actual new cases since I've been here. All right, the policies, I think we're over our goal. So the board's goal was met even with COVID, and we still have several months to add to the totals here. We are on the new revised and repealed, we're pretty much dead even with the past year. And that's going to go up again because I know we got several policies coming up before the end of the fiscal year. So we'll add to those totals. All right, and then in January, Valerie Lindano started as Assistant General Counsel. Right now, she's handling any conflict questions and issues that come up that I can't advise on. So mainly employee discipline, student discipline issues that they have questions on what's appropriate will go to her. We are splitting the contracts right now and trying 50-50 kind of thing so she can get in. She's assisting with other departments as issues arise and getting experience with school issues. So she usually sits in with me on meetings. Like she'll be sitting in with the board audit committee review this week, just so she can see how that works and goes. Coordinating policy revision processes, and long-term, she has expressed interest in Title IX, ESE matters, and charter school matters. So, yep. So, and then we'll get her working in on the student services side as well, which those I'm sure so Barb been quiet on the custody issues. I think they're doing well with that.
Why would you say that?
Yeah, no, it's okay.
Tell him to just be done with the, we're good on this presentation, Paul. We're good, man. You ain't gotta say nothing else.
That's why I said we had COVID and that was it. So we're done. So in February, again, everybody knows, we saw Juanita Williams leave to Orange, so Amy stole her back, which I'm told everybody kind of expected, but we got a year out of her, so that was good enough for us. We're trying to replace her. We hope that to bring somebody by March 23rd's board meeting for a replacement, but I'm hoping it'll stay quiet the rest of this week so we can look to those and get it scheduled. Hey, spring break's next week, so we're good.
You just jinxed everyone's spring break.
Hey,
Paul.
I'm working anyways. It's all right.
Is there a clause in our current contract that if there is a person that is absent, that the other two receive the salary benefit from that individual? No? Okay. I'm trying to get some yeses
Do you
on
want the teachers to come knocking on the door, Mr. Susan?
That's where I was trying to get.
Yeah.
This to.
Pretty sure there would be a lot more people to argue that.
Yeah.
Jenkins, I was trying to get some yeses on.
So goals for the next year or so, we want to fill the paralegal position, obviously, because as we experienced this morning, I don't remember my password to get in the thing very well. So I had to call Juanita and get my password so I could file a pleading with the court because I was down to my last 4 tries. We want to implement a new outside counsel system where the outside counsel comes under a general contract for services rather than having like 100 different engagement letters floating around. That way it's like it'll be for a 3-year contract with their rates approved by the board. And then we can just say, all right, here's the cadre of attorneys we have. What do you need? And we can kind of send them as they come in and they're ready to go. I'm looking to get outside counsel more directly reporting to general counsel. And I talked to Amy on this. This was one of her goals as well, because it's something I noticed. We aren't getting notified as often as we probably should be when cases are coming in. They're going to risk management and they're already with outside counsel. And I get a call like, hey, have you seen this on a subpoena? And it's for a case that we have. It might be workers' comp or something, but we never knew it came in. And it's already out through the risk process. Those should really be floating through legal, and then we funnel it to risk management to go out. So that's what just one of the processes that we need to do, because I don't like getting called and I don't know we've been sued on something. Then we want to revise the service of process so that when, oh, that's what I just said. Never mind. All right, get board category for legal costs. That's something I've noticed, and I've talked to Dr. Thetty a little bit about, is there's no real budget for the board as far as legal costs go. They just get paid. That's what I'm told. So it's good that they're getting paid, but it's like when I get asked, you know, what are we spending? It's like, I have no idea. And we're running around the district trying to get what's ESE services attorneys being billed out, what's the HR attorneys being billed out at. So there's no real way to get that. And I would like to get it to where we can say we're spending $300,000 or less a year or whatever it is. That's where I'd like to be. It's accountable and we know whether it's going up, why is it going up, what areas do we need to focus on. Right now it's so scattered that I can't really tell you where the big problems are and where we're bleeding for attorneys. And final thoughts, considering the modern era and the era of compulsory education through grade 12, I consider this year to be highly successful as a school district, not just legal services, because we're still here and we're enduring through all of this, and we will be here when it's over. So we've had to blaze new trails. You know, people call, can we do this? It's like there is no case law on compulsory education times with pandemics and keeping the doors open and operating. So I think everybody in the organization should be extremely proud that that litigation number over the last year is so low, and our DOA cases are so low and expulsions with what we've had to deal with over the past year. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Did you put the wood floor on the bottom of this PowerPoint so you can knock on it throughout?
Yes.
Okay, just curious.
And the pencils. I'll knock on the wood with the wood pencil.
Any board members have any additional questions for Paul or Valerie? Valerie, did you find a house yet?
No. Now she's jinxed it. There you go.
We'll all be praying for that for you. Absolutely. Welcome to the team. We're very glad that you're here. Thank you, Paul. We appreciate it immensely.
I gotta, Paul, your last slide, that closing sentence, did you all read that?
Yes.
That's like wall hanging, like quality.
I know. I literally thought that. I'm like, oh, that's a really good quote.
Mike in the back, can you put the last slide back up? We got to give the man credit after
Yeah.
he's
It's already
jinxed us.
there.
I mean, go one more slide, Mike.
Yep.
No, one more. And again.
That
There
one.
you go. Simply because we endured, and while emerging tired, we emerge more capable having endured.
Right?
Did you write that?
Yep.
That's impressive.
Super deep. Super deep.
Closing argument. There you go.
But I do want to extend a genuine welcome again publicly to, I don't know that we even publicly introduced her at a board meeting, Valerie Landano joining Team Legal. Been a great addition already. Value add to our efforts here in Brevard Schools, making us better. Clearly a good team working together and representing us and supporting us. And, you know, in some cases, unfortunate required work, but nonetheless, we can do it increasingly confident with their support and services. So thank you, Mr. Gibbs. Thank you, Ms. Landano.
Yep. No, she's been fantastic. She jumped straight in, and I've probably held her back on some things more than she's been eager to go and learn. So I've been trying to wait her in so she didn't run away and hide. So it's been a good team.
Good call.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, our last order of business on this agenda is about the Youth Truth Survey results. Dr. Stephanie Sullivan, Assistant Superintendent of Secondary Leading and Learning, will lead the presentation. But before I let her start, I just have to say, Lena, you're amazing. You pulled your magic again. Thank you so much. We appreciate you. Dr. Sullivan?
Thank you, Ms. Belford and board members and Dr. Mullins for an opportunity to share the voices of our students. I think that's probably one of the most important things we do each year is listen to them, hear their concerns, and be responsive. Thank you for introducing Mrs. Weibelt, because I was going to do that next as well. Some of you are probably wondering, does she do everything? It sort of feels like it sometimes. So Ms. Weibelt is a director of Secondary Leading and Learning. She is a principal supervisor. She does oversee major discipline, but she's also our director over federal programs, which is how she landed in Youth Truth Survey. And so Lena is really the expert in working with the company and helping train our schools and our administrators. And so this is our second year of our formal student survey, which is very exciting, which means we have comparative data. For a reference point, last year's student survey was also completed in January, so it was pre-COVID. And this is obviously a during COVID survey. And so there's some new features there that allowed school leaders to look at the impact of COVID for our students and look at the difference in respondents for those that have distance learning. And so I'm going to highlight some of the data here for you today, give you an overview of the findings for our elementary schools, our middle schools, and our high schools. Hopefully you noticed I tried to mix up the graphs and tables and data just to keep it interesting and keep us hopping. I'm then going to do a brief overview of how to manage the Youth Truth website. I know that you all are very interested in the words of our students and the feedback provided to our schools. Each one of you consistently reach out on concerns for our kids. So I'm going to give you just a quick refresh on how to navigate it, because it is a little quirky but very powerful. And then finally, I'm going to talk to you about next steps. There are some incredible resources throughout the Youth Truth Survey that guide our school leaders in using and honoring the data. And obviously, that's the most important part, hearing and then responding. And every one of our principals has been trained in the last 3 weeks. We did some comprehensive training. This is year 2 of training on what that looks like. And I'm going to show you a few of the options that our schools have in utilizing the data. And so first we're going to talk about our elementary school students. Hopefully you are as amazed as I am, an 87% response rate. These are big numbers. You're going to see high response rates across the board. Those are incredibly high rates of return, which really give us confidence in validity and reliability of the data. And so what you see here is an overview. And so each set of questions correlates to a summary category. So for example, within engagement, there are a series of questions. Same within academic challenge, relationships, culture, instructional methods, and belongings. The surveys between elementary, middle, and high school are slightly different for age appropriateness, and the amount of ways that we can disaggregate are slightly different based on age appropriateness, because students do self-identify categories that they belong to. It is a completely anonymous survey. There is no way for us to track back to a specific student. And so what you'll see here is what are positive rates of return, meaning the percentage of students that in aggregate rated those elements positively. When I look at survey data, I love to see a range of responses. This tells me that students read it carefully. This one being lower is lower, right? So they picked and choose and read and thought. Our patterns tell us that pretty clearly. And so you can see right here from an academic engagement point of view, 90% is a pretty big number. It's very consistent with where we were last year. And as you can see across the board, the patterns, although mostly improved, they're relatively consistent, which is interesting to me. So the students are reading the questions and doing their best to rate them accordingly. The national standards are for elementary schools, but not specifically to Florida. So it's a national aggregate of elementary schools throughout the country. Wanted you to take a look at those patterns there. And then I've provided you the same information by grade level and by race and ethnicity. So for our elementary students, those are the two main areas that we can disaggregate the data, because the students self-select their grade level, and then they self-select their racial or ethnic identity. And so as you can see, the patterns are interesting, but not really different, with the exception of our sixth graders. And so anybody that's worked in an elementary school is probably not terribly surprised. Ms. Klein and I are really looking to do some substantial work this next year on the 6th to 7th grade transition, so that information is really important to us. But I want to give you a second to take a look at those data points before I move on to more specific. Again, these are the general aggregate categories. So another way Youth Truth provides data is they give you an opportunity to have specific questions really disaggregated and analyzed. So for example, I felt like the board would be interested in the students' response on how the pandemic has affected their life. So we're really pleased that our survey results include that. And when you see rated positively, that doesn't mean it impacted them positively. They affirmatively responded that the pandemic has impacted their life. And that's looking at the agree category and agree and strongly agree in our middle and our high school. I went ahead and looked at the data by the race, ethnicity, major categories as well. I thought you might find that interesting. And as you can see, our elementary school students did report a little disproportionate response. And in this case, the highest response of impact was to our African American students. And this again matches what we see in national trends and data and reports. And interesting to see that from a student self-described perspective as well. So what you see here, when you see yellow, green, or red bars, you'll see that that's an increase or a decrease, just for a visual cue. And these are some of the questions from our engagement category. That 91% in your teacher wanting you to work your hardest, I think is a really incredible response when you consider the numbers of which we had, and we know that teacher expectations are a critical lever in improving student outcomes. Does your teacher ask you to keep trying when the work gets hard? You know, we talk about perseverance, we talk about grit a lot. We talk about teaching our students to work past those obstacles, and that was a positive rate of 66. And you can see that little 65 at the bottom. That's your cue on what it was last year. And then finally, does your teacher want you to do your best? You know, some of these seem like really simple questions, but they tell a tale. Do you believe that your teacher wants you to be successful? I think that's a really important thing to measure as a school district and be responsive to, and these are really fantastic results. And so some other interesting data points, and as you can see, I did a smattering of things that I thought might appeal to the board members right now, and of course gonna teach you how to engage with the data a little bit more. Do you like attending your class? Right? We want kids to like school. We think it's important. And think about what we just saw on the positive responses, that this was only 48% rated positively that they like school. And so that's something that I know our elementary teams and their teachers and principals are looking at and working on. Went ahead and broke that down by grade level. And you can see which grade level brought the average down. And once again, you see our third graders, for the most part, really like attending school. And you see that decline fourth, fifth, and sixth grade. And again, it's something we're going to work on because we certainly don't want to have our peak in third grade. We want to continue that trajectory. A couple of other interesting questions over here on the right-hand side. Does the work you do for class really make you think? I love that question. I think it is important. It's not just easy. It's not just fun. Does it really make you think? And as you can see, we had a nice increase in that from school year 20 to 21. Do you learn a lot? Again, an increase there. And I wonder if you're pausing alongside me, because I think maybe our instincts would have been in COVID, in these difficult times, that we probably would have expected to see some decreases, right? So I really was surprised because I know our students have really struggled. Their positive response is a real testament to our teachers. It really begins and ends there with what our teachers have done to provide a positive experience for our students. When you're not seeing dramatic declines, that's impressive. Do you learn interesting things? Also increase. And what about what you learned, does it help you outside of school? Well, we can see we have pretty low relevancy rates in our elementary school, something that they make sense, but maybe we can work on a little bit. These two I thought were really powerful data points. We know that metacognition, writing about thinking, speaking about thinking is really important to students' cognitive development. And so when we look at a question, does your teacher let you explain your ideas? It's a really interesting question, and it tells a lot sort of about the cognitive load on the child. And as you can see, an increase there, but I certainly think that's a data point we hope to see continue to increase. And this one I thought was interesting to pull in spotlight. Does your teacher ask you to show your work? And that's one that I would imagine has a little bit to do with COVID. But again, it's getting at metacognition and the value of teaching students to really think about their thinking and their understanding about the work and be articulate about it. Here's a couple more questions that are comparing school year 20 to school year 21. I'll let you take a look at those. And hopefully you're struck by that little bit incremental increase again, right? It's something that we certainly would not have anticipated. And again, the credit entirely goes to our teaching staff at the schools. Does the teacher treat you with respect? I think that's a really important question to ask our kids as young as third grade, because it models to them what treating somebody with respect looks like. And I think we get a lot of long-lasting benefits from having a school culture where you're treated with respect. So think about our student rates on, do they like school? The sort of 50 to 40% rate, but 86% students really felt confident that their teachers treated them with respect. And then I took those questions. I thought those were an interesting set of questions to do a comparison, again, by grade level and by race and ethnicity. Do our students of color perceive those questions differently? Perceive feeling respected by their teachers, the teachers being fair, and the teacher caring about them? And I think you will see a very nominal difference. There are pretty low differences between them, but certainly differences we want to attend to. I think even a little bit of difference is something that's really important to all of us, but interesting to see our different populations of students' perceptions. And our sixth grade's keeping on that same track.
Especially.
All right, so this is one that causes pause. Do the students behave well in your class? All I can say is a pause, right? So again, when you see students rate certain things really high and certain things low, to me, that's a really good sign that they take it seriously. 25% of students. And the shocking part is that's a big increase over last year. So at last year, only 15% of students felt that students behave well in their class. If I'm a school principal, it's absolutely a topic I'm going to deconstruct. I'm going to have some small group student meetings and really try to get to the core of that result. Do you feel safe in school? Again, that feeling safe puts you in a state to learn. We all know that, right? If you feel safe, you can reach those higher levels. We're back to Maslow again. And so take a look, that was a decline. Is that COVID? I'm not sure. Additional conversations with students could definitely help that. And again, do you feel safe in school by grade level? And you see that high result in third grade, but there's still 22% of third graders that don't feel safe. So again, we want to understand where we are making students feel safe, valued, respected, and where we're not. Even if that not is a small percentage, it's a percentage too much. I think everybody would agree. Being a part of the school community, this is one of the ones we track district-wide. We feel like there's a couple of questions throughout the survey that really tell a tale, and this is one of them. And again, I disaggregated this data for you by grade level and by race and ethnicity. Let you take a look at that. This was not a question on a prior year, so that's why you don't see any comparative data. All right, this is the one that's going to get you in the gut. So if you look to the left, you'll see two in the health and wellness categories that I thought were really important, especially in COVID, especially in understanding the strife that some of our community members have faced, some of our families have faced. And so I eat regular meals. Simple question. Huge decline from last year. Huge decline. What I can say makes me thankful for our food services division that at any length will always make sure they prioritize feeding kids. Met with them this morning about wanting to have food service at every single school during summer school. And they were like, yep, we'll do it. We're really lucky because third through sixth graders, only 72% said they eat regular meals. And get enough sleep. 40% aware enough to say, I'm not getting enough sleep. 60% of them aware enough to say, I'm not getting enough sleep. And again, look at that decline from last year. So we're seeing a survey with a lot of positive attributes, a lot of improvements over last year, which is great. But then when you see these stark declines, it adds actually more credence to them and gives you greater concern. So on this question, I thought you might find it interesting if we separated out the students who were in person and who were virtual, because I was thinking, if I was a board member, I might ask that question. So fortunately, with this data, they added a filter for whether a student is in person or virtual. And so I thought you might like to see in the entire breadth of categories in that area. Some of the ones that, of course, got on my radar, I connect with friends. The difference between students in person and virtual. Something that I think is concerning. Less students virtual getting enough exercise. And these are questions that were only asked of the e-learners, which I thought was pretty great to be able to take a look at. So out of the subpopulation of students who self-identified as e-learners, these were their responses to these questions. Only those students got these questions. And I think there's a big pause there that you're all either feeling already because you read ahead. So while learning from home, do you meet with your teachers online? 75% positive. Do you connect with your classmates? Way down to 32%. And we know how important social cognition is, so that's a concern. This is the one that surprised me the most. So far this school year, do you like learning from home? So these are students that are learning from home. These are only e-learners. And only a third respond that they like learning from home. I was very surprised by that data. Again, this is why we ask students, because we can sit up here and surmise responses and think we know the answers and think we know students' needs. Time and time and time again, when we ask children, when we interview students, when we do those things, we shift our thinking. And this is one that really surprised me. So just a quick pause for any questions on that elementary school data before we dive into our middle school students.
I've got one, Ms. Belford.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Sullivan, for doing all this. I've just got, as we go through and we're comparing on some slides to the national data, are those national comparison numbers for the current year, or are those just Youth Truth's regular ongoing averages?
Thank you. I got a head nod from my friend Lena Weibout. Those are national averages from this year.
Okay, just wanted to make sure we're comparing,
Yep.
COVID era numbers to COVID era numbers. Good.
Yeah, they are. In fact, when we did the principal training, they disaggregated some of those national trends even further for us on COVID era data.
Okay. All right, that's all for now. Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Campbell. Ms. Jenkins, I think you looked like you were going to.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. So in the beginning, when we're talking about the response rate, I just have a question. So didn't the students have to take this at school?
The students who were e-learners took it at home.
Right. Okay. I guess what I meant by that is, I'm glad we had a really good response rate, but shouldn't we technically expect that? Aren't they expected to take this, or can they opt out of it?
Yes and yes.
Okay.
Expected to. Would we argue with a parent not wanting their child to? Of course not.
Okay.
Absences and, different factors in different schools. I know what brought down the overall elementary rate, one school had some substantial technical difficulties. So yes, Ms. Weibout is actually our affectionate nag and sent out 3 times a week response rates to the schools to make sure they were following through. But the usual bevy of reasons not to interfere.
Okay. This is kind of a random question, but looking at the responses from the 6th grade, I was in an elementary school, I get it, but it kind of brings me to just kind of question and throw out there, when did that transition of middle school being 6, 7, 8 happen to change to 7, 8 only? Is that something that's kind of like maybe thought about and dug at a little bit to see maybe there's a reason why these kiddos are so different?
Yeah, I've been in this district 25 years. And in that 25-year span, we were actually a junior high district originally. So they were 7 through 9. And then the 9th grade went to the high school. So we've never been in at least that time span, a 6 through 8. So the answer is mixed, because the academic achievement of our 6th grade far exceeds any other grade. And so every year, Ms. Klein and I sit and look at it. Several board members have brought it up. Our 6th graders outperform 6th graders in the state by a lot. They are our highest performing group of students as individual students. So there is a bit of a mix between the paradigm of responses that we're seeing in terms of discipline and responses on surveys to academic records. So Ms. Klein and I, we've discussed with Dr. Mullins, you can expect to see some changes in the strategic plan, really focusing on transition and focusing on that 6th to 7th grade transition, which I believe impacts down the road. So for example, right now we're out there interviewing students specifically about their 6th grade experience, what might have better prepared them for 7th grade, and 7th grade, what they could be doing. So historically in Brevard County, the sixth graders have always, 25 years at least, been in our elementary schools, and they've always performed very highly. So that's the tricky part. Do we move someone when they're performing exceptionally well?
And thank you for that, because I don't know the whole history there.
Yeah.
I've been in Brevard for 15 years, and where I grew up, our middle school was 6th, 7th, and 8th. So that's kind of where that question stemmed from my experience. So then I guess my other tacking off of that question is, I like that we're focusing on the 6th grade transition to 7th grade, but shouldn't we ultimately also be looking at that transition from 5th to 6th, where we're seeing that huge decline?
Yeah. My preliminary goal is looking at a 6-semester plan. So this is what semester 1 of 6th grade looks like. This is what semester 2 looks like, semester 1 of 7th grade, semester 2, and then into that preparation. Of course, that naturally includes 5th grade as well. Right now, we're just thinking and gathering. What we don't want to do is decide on an answer that is not completely well thought out and inclusive of student, teacher, community feedback. So right now you kind of have a sneak peek into our goal is to really spend next year, the rest of the summer, front-loading information, understanding our student patterns and our parent requests. So we don't want to apply a solution. That's really hard for me. So I'm showing some professional growth and not wanting to just provide a solution. So we're really working on gathering information.
And then the last thing, I just, more of a comment that so as I was visiting schools, I visited all of my schools in this tiny bit of time where this youth survey was happening. And from a lot of them, I got a lot of responses from 3rd grade teachers that felt like it was kind of difficult to administer this to their students just because of their cognitive ability to kind of understand those questions and the unique ways they were interpreting some of them. I'm not discrediting the data by any means, but I just kind of want to throw out there, I had a couple of teachers tell me specifically one question, that question about safety. Do you feel safe in your schools? And from their 3rd graders, they got that very immature response of, well, I'm scared like some villain from my show is going to be in the bathroom, or, that kind of that immature response to a question like that.
Yeah.
So I think it's just important to kind of throw that out there. I'm not saying that affects the data tremendously, but, the question like, do you like learning from home? Some of our little kids are like, well, I'd rather go play my video game as well too. So it's important to kind of keep that in mind that we do have little guys taking this too.
Oh, absolutely. And when we look at patterns,
Yeah.
We look at tendencies, we look at a combination of questions that may be telling us the same tale, and our principals have access to read every single comment that a student makes that's not a part of a choice. So yeah, for sure.
Thank you.
We good with pressing on to middles? Okay. So our middle schools, we had a rather large return rate there of 99%, which far exceeds our attendance rate, so we're pretty pleased about that. Middle school is extra impacted by COVID when you think about the year and a half or so out of a 2-year experience. And so our 8th graders had just gotten through 7th grade, had March come along, and now this year all in that term, and our 7th graders transitioning, some of them, particularly our e-learners, directly in. So our middle schools as 2-year schools had some really unique impacts. You can see some of that same summary data, but again, not what I would have expected. Some modest increases, which again, school year 20 was pre-COVID, and once again, I'm going to probably say it 100 times, our teachers are just rock stars. To get these kinds of positive responses from students in the type of year that we've had is pretty incredible. And I'm going to go on to some specifics. So right now you see this gigantic chart. Don't freak out. It was more of an example of we have more indicators now in our middles. Again, these are all self-reported criteria. So to the top left, you can see those same results by grade level. So our 7th graders versus our 8th graders. If you go down, you'll see by self-reported grades. And you can assume, don't worry, not every slide is disaggregated this way. Just wanted an example of how to look at it. Interestingly, the students who respond, I have mostly A's, or I have mostly B's, or mostly C's, or mostly D's and below, their responses are directly aligned with that, which I thought was pretty interesting. Take a look at by race and ethnicity. And again, these are each of the categories, self-disclosed. And, you know, once again, you see the patterns are pretty consistent. So even the things we rate high, most all groups rate high. The things we rate low, most all groups rate low. And so then again, that gives you credence in the response. And by program, I identified students who self-identified as special education versus general education. There are some additional categories as well, and I'll show you that when we go into the actual Youth Truth data. And so again, pulled a couple questions just by middle school that I thought the results were kind of interesting. I enjoy school most of the time. So you'll see even the way we ask the questions gets a little bit more complex as the kids get older, and gives them more choices. So up 42% over 37%. So although that 42% doesn't, you know, make you want to be a cheerleader per se, but for middle school students, not bad. Mm-hmm. And then more importantly, it's an increase. So even in the time of COVID, more students positively said they enjoy school most of the time. You'll see the rates there on how COVID has impacted them. And the one I mentioned before, the work I do for my classes really makes me think. So these are the academic challenge questions. Going to give you a second to take a look at it. So you'll see each of the questions has its own set of bars. And then you'll see the green and red at the bottom cueing you onto increase and decrease. And so again, you're seeing students respond more positively this year than last year, which is a surprise to me. And then you'll see the bars are done by race and ethnicity. And again, throughout the presentation, I'll do a variety of different comparisons. One to highlight for the board, but also to show the level of data that we have in front of us to analyze. Most of my teachers want me to explain my answers, why I think what I think, and that was one that we declined in. But as you can see, overall, not a terribly low scoring element. And you can see the difference in our racial and ethnic groups. So on to safety, 56% rated positively. I feel safe in school. I broke those down a little bit for you because I thought you might be interested. Our in-person students versus our virtual students. You know, I can infer our virtual students are just speaking to school in general. Probably not necessarily identifying it to this year, but do I feel safe in school? It's an inference. And again, you can see how our different racial and ethnic groups responded to that same question. The culture questions are some of my favorite ones to see the middle school responses because they have very strong feelings about what's fair and not fair. And I'm not surprised in some of the patterns that we see. But again, you're going to see increases this year over last year. Discipline in this school is fair. My classmates want to do well. Adults treat students with respect. And again, that's one I like to see as a higher response. So even though they less think it's fair, they have some disgruntled feelings, more of them show that the students treat them with respect. And that's something that is really important. And I know multiple divisions up here have really been working on that concept. Now look at the converse. So the students responded one way, adults from my school treat students with respect. And then look to the right, students from my school treat adults with respect. That was one that it rocked my world, and I sat there staring at my screen for a while. It's incredible to me that middle school students had the thought process to really reflect on how well their teachers treated them and how their peers don't necessarily treat their adults. I feel a part of my school community. Again, a low score, but an increase. I can be myself. Most students are friendly to me. So the big question to the right is one that we're looking closely at all of our schools as well. When I'm feeling upset, stressed, or having problems, there's an adult from my school who I can talk to. So this is one of the few where you saw a pretty steep decline. So in a lot of areas, our students rated their experiences this year more positively, but not on this one. We've had several conversations with school principals about this indicators and way to really get to the root of it and try to troubleshoot. I'll give you an opportunity to look at all the questions in that cluster in a comparison from last year to this year. And so for our middles, you see a pattern on connecting with their teachers as a bit of a struggle area. Not a big surprise with the 2-year configuration, but again, you see an increase in response. You see an increase in positive responses to those. One of the ones I like to see is a nice big number there. How many of your teachers believe that you can get a good grade if you try? So despite their 25% here, their 29%, their teachers' expectations of them, they could feel that they were strong and positive. This is a different look at a couple of the questions that we did for the elementary, and I gave you the kind of the entire breakdown of their responses. I get enough sleep and I eat regular meals. I think one thing this year's survey has done is highlight those issues that we don't control that are impacting their school day. So my friend, Mr. Cheatham, is going to cringe in the other room. Do any of the following make it hard for you to do your best in school? Social emotional concerns, you see in that first question, look how high that response was. Home and family responsibilities. This one for my friend, Mr. Cheatham, limited or no internet access. 32% said that. The change from elementary school to middle, I was super pleased they asked that question, and I don't feel safe at home, which is making it hard for me to do well at school. 17% of our students reported not feeling safe at home, that impacting them at school. That's another big pause. So again, you're seeing over half our students identifying depression, stress, and anxiety as getting in the way of school. Questions about our middle school data. See the mic in your hands.
Sorry. Kind of more of like a comment for my first thing. The students, the response that the students were saying that their fellow students don't treat adults with respect in their school. I'm not shocked by that because when I was looking at some of the open-ended responses, when a lot of the kids were complaining about the behavior in their school and the behavior issues, that was one of the biggest things that they free responded on was, I'm so tired of my peers not treating the adults with respect, which is really incredible for them to pull that. So I just wanted to jump on that. I know you did mention it. I do have a question about, so for instance, that response, I don't feel safe at home. Is there a way for us, I know we can't identify these students, but to take a question and break down that question by identifying qualities, like male, female, grade level?
We can't.
Okay.
Part of obviously is the anonymity of it. What we can do is schools can follow up with their own additional information.
Okay.
And so some of the recommendations are for schools to maybe tackle single or one or two questions and do some progress monitoring surveying on it. They can certainly, by knowing there's that many students, use some other avenues of outreach and ask more questions, at school, and be more attuned to all the things that we know are then behaviors as a result of that. But there's not a way for us to identify students at all.
Okay, thank you.
Some of the students you probably have seen in the comments self-identify. I think they were testing their administrators, but the administrators found them and went and talked to them. So some of the students did self-identify in the comment part to where a principal could follow up with them.
And yeah, so you just brought something up that I was thinking about when I was reading some of them. Again, we can't identify the student, but there were some pre-responses that were very concerning. And so if we were able to kind of look at it and say, male, female, grade level, just to kind of help that administrator maybe dig down into where that's coming from.
So Youth Truth as an organization flags for us also.
Okay.
So they go through all of the comments, using search algorithms and words and those fancy things. And they send us, even before the results or at any of those comments that are a concern, we send those to the principals so they may know, hey, this week we might want to do more about our suicide awareness programs. Or, so they looked at those pattern of responses and then either could help identify a student or amplify school-wide efforts around those topics.
Thanks.
All right, our high school students, so 77% response rate. I know that's a little low in comparison, but for high schoolers, that's pretty good. When you consider how many are off campus with dual enrollment and virtual school, it's actually not a bad response rate at all. And again, we're starting off with the general patterns of the student responses. And you're seeing a commonality, aren't you? You're seeing a commonality in culture being a concern and some of those areas. The college and career just gets me in my heart, but we're going to keep working on it because the students keep telling us they're not prepared, and we're going to tackle that. And so again, just this initial data, I did a couple of different categories for your interest. The students' grades, mostly A's through mostly D's. The students' racial or ethnic identity, again by program, general education or special education, and then in-person or virtual. I was struck by how similar the responses were on our virtual students to our in-person students. So that really surprised me there. Looking on, how much has COVID affected you? 49% of students said it has affected them seriously. I did the grade level breakdown there for you. And I was surprised, I guess I'm not surprised, I was surprised at first that the seniors rated the most impact, but then when I consider a senior student's mindset, it doesn't surprise me. I enjoy school most of the time. We're getting a little lower there, but it's still an increase over last year. And then again, some of the key questions about pride. I enjoy school. I try to do my best. I did a virtual and in-person split for you. And again, surprisingly not very different. So some of the questions that get to that interaction between the students and the teachers, and you can see I have to work hard. The work I do makes me think. I can tell my teachers understand the subjects and the assignments. Again, all increases over prior year. One of my favorite questions, we learn to correct our mistakes. That is a critical skill set as you get older. Certainly very important in college, and I was very curious to see the students' pattern of responses there. And so this is that same flip question that we saw with our middles. Students in this school treat adults with respect, 29%. Adults treat students with respect, 54%. Again, both of them an increase over prior year and a relatively significant increase over prior year. I have to tag on to one of Ms. Jenkins' comments. I was at a middle school last week interviewing students, and one of the questions I ask is, what can I tell your principal to make school better? And all the students I interviewed commented on the misbehavior of other students. And so it's definitely on the forefront of our mind and how we sort of rally that energy from the students to impact the overall conduct. I feel safe during school. Let you take a look at that. And for this one, I added some of the bullying questions I thought you would find interesting. Have other students bullied or harassed you? So this is a significant improvement over last year. So that 11% of yes is a decline from 17%. That 84% is an increase from 76%. So really positive to see students self-reporting a decline in bullying, because students most often use the word bullying for many things and tend to over-identify bullying. Thought these were powerful questions too. In my school, there are clear rules. Students like clarity. We say in secondary reading and learning, clear is kind. And the more clear you are, the less burden on somebody to have to remember a lot, understand guidelines. Clear rules are important for everyone. Adults at my school try to stop bullying and harassment. I was pleased to see an increase, modest, but still an increase. And I try to help other students. College and career readiness. This is near and dear to my heart. Working extensively with folks in my department in the schools. And we have room to grow still. It's really easy when you get survey results on something you work at to explain the results away. To say, oh, but we did this. You can't. And we've really had to change our mindset. How the students feel really matters. And so we have to be on a continual quest to understand how to connect to today's students, not the answer we think we have for them. Back to sort of the 7th and 6th grade problem. We've got to listen to the kids and understand their answers on how to work with them. And so this is by grade level in some of the key questions around college and career readiness, and a lot of room to grow. Any questions on the high school overview?
Can we jump back to middle school for a second?
Absolutely.
So I'm looking at slide 19, and when I'm feeling upset, stressed, having problems, there's adult school like that kind of concerns me big time. Especially time long. So do we promote our social workers? I mean, I think I'm just asking the question because I think that concerns me, that response there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a multi-pronged approach. Obviously, our schools all have slightly different models. Ms. Morris talked about a lot of the trainings that she has done for our schools, from check-in to check-outs. I'm a huge believer in dependable, reliable, and accessible supervision. Getting our counselors in the cafeteria every single day at this time so students can access them reliably and build relationships. I'm really trying to work on supervision not as a model of discipline, but as a model of reliable, accessible interactions with adults on your campus. Most of our middle schools have created, through very creative scheduling, some homeroom type time. And so in some schools, it's like once a week. Delora Middle School has a really incredible program that they do. Some of our schools are doing daily small groups. Our minutes are really tight, like literally our instructional minutes. But most of our schools are working towards that. We've done a lot of group share in our middle schools around increasing that social emotional support time. Again, also working with our student services partners. So it is absolutely a cause for concern, in my opinion. Like I said, our principals just got their data and this training on different ways to use it as well. We go back to this all year long. And so when our directors are doing their small group principal meetings, they are bringing this data to the forefront. We're talking about effective strategies, best practices. We've identified schools that had significant growth in some of those social emotional areas. Jefferson Middle School is a really good example. And so we've looked for schools with some of those growth areas and trying to tie back into some of those strategies. But it's an ongoing quest for sure.
If I may add to that same conversation, as the board knows, I meet with student government leaders about every other month and have for the last 2 years. And Dr. Sullivan and Ms. Moore participate in those conversations with us. And as we had some open conversation, this is right before COVID last year, we were talking about, are you aware of and taking advantage of the mental health support services, our licensed mental health counselors, our social workers in our schools? And to our disappointment, but at least to our new awareness, the kids were saying, who? We have what? How do I get a hold of that? How do I let my friend know? So we started that conversation with our student government leaders. Okay, how can you help us promote, encourage, inform your peers that we have those supports at our schools? And it's been an interrupted conversation because not being able to meet in person over the last several months, but it's very, again, asking the kids, we think we're doing what they need. Yeah, we've taught it, but, concept, but they aren't understanding it. So, Ms. McDougall, we echo your concerns because we're spending a lot of money on resources we know are effective, but they're only effective if our kids know it's there and take advantage of it. So we definitely have work to do, but it just kind of validates that our kids, they've got to know, and we've got to inform them directly outside of all the district-initiated stuff.
One of the great initiatives that we have, in my opinion, is Sources of Strength. You've heard from Chris and her team. They've pushed down into our middle schools, if not this year, next year. So I know it was planned, but COVID. So I think Sources of Strength provides a lot of support and interaction for that kind of work. So we will absolutely continue to monitor it.
Can I just jump in there real quick? So this is no discredit to everyone who's working in mental health in our district. I think we're doing the best we can with the limited resources that we have. But I do think it's important to just state as a board and as a leader in the community to say, this really just kind of solidifies that we need to continue to advocate at the state level for funding for these things and to reprioritize as much as we can as a district to focus on this for our students. I'm not saying that you guys haven't done this. I don't know if you have, but I really encourage you to spend a day with a counselor and see really what they're spending their day doing and how little they have to actually interact with our students because of all their other duties. This is really, really important. And I feel like, we're so far off of that recommended ratio from the national associations. And I think it's important to just be really vocal about that. Again, no discredit to everything that's happening in this county from the people who work in the area of mental health by any means. But even our mental health counselors and our social workers will say it to you. We need more of us. We need more of us. So we need to continue to advocate for that.
I would be remiss if I didn't mention the challenges of our guidance counselor ratios in our middle schools. I'm going to get the number not exactly right, but it's ballpark. It's about 630 kids until you get a second counselor. And so that first counselor is doing everything with PI and TSS assessments and things like that. We definitely, each year, we hope to put forward an aggressive proposal to right the wrongs, and the budget cards we've been dealt have not allowed us. I think back with Dr. Thetty and Ms. Moore and Ms. Klein, myself, we are very concerned about counselors. As we look at CARES Act, we're looking at adding counselors for our priority schools in particular. So adding counselors with any available funds is a high priority. And you're absolutely correct. I appreciate you mentioning that as a board member. It's woefully understaffed. And so the social workers have helped a great deal. So I certainly don't want to dismiss their incredible impact on our schools. But our school counselors have loads of over 600 students.
And I appreciate you highlighting that number because I was going to ask that question if we have an update on it. And I believe the National Association recommends
250.
1 to 250. I haven't looked at it in a long
250.
time.
250.
Yeah, yeah. So I just want the public to be aware
It is.
of how far
So-
off that is.
And the point is, we're not even close.
Right, we're not even close.
And I do want to add, it came to my mind, appreciation to our Federation of Teachers. Our teachers union came to me last week, I want to say, and just made us aware they were awarded a $50,000 grant, which included helping fund additional sources of strength programs at our schools. So I think they're going to fund 5 over the course of the next year plus. So there is collective awareness, understanding, and a unified interest to support our kids. So that's just hot off the press. Mr. Colucci literally just texted me last week, didn't even know they were applying for it. So I think Ms. Moore is like surprised in the back, and we love positive news like that. So we got to work through the details, but I think it demonstrates we've got a collective awareness and understanding, but we need to elevate that now to further support.
And honestly, the line between home and school is blurred. You know, the challenges at one impact the other in both ways. And so we need to continue to provide additional services for our students, and that's different. So thank you, Ms. Jenkins. I appreciate it. I share every concern that you have. I'm going to take just 5 to 10 minutes and give you a little sort of 101 on this spreadsheet if you haven't had time to dive into it to the degree that you want to. We have district-wide access for all of cabinet, most of our instructional directors, you guys, of course. We want people touching and using this data. And again, it's not student identifiable. So I'm going to just show you a quick few tricks of the trade to help you manage this much. You know, go to filters, and I like the district ones by cluster. And the reason I suggest these is you can see.
Dr. Sullivan, hold on just one second. Mr. Francisco, could you give us the PowerPoint slides on our, thank you so much. Sorry, we couldn't see what you were talking about, so we're good now.
So I filter to district report, and I'm going to just use high school just because there's a lot more categories in high school. And want to just show you some of the power of this data. We want people in there touching it, using it. It's not a secret. We have shared it with everybody that's interested. There's stuff for our operations division, student services, you name it, there's good data there. So I'm going to show you how to navigate via the high school one. And I would encourage you to use this report instead of going to individual schools, because you can see a lot more. You can see every school ranked. I know how you guys are. And so you can see all of that. And you can see that all in one report. So I'm going to just use one cluster as an example. I'm going to go ahead and pick the academic challenge cluster. So for every cluster, you'll see percentile charts, percent positives, and response distributions. And I'm going to show you the difference in those really quickly. So I'm going to go to academic challenge percentile charts. And so, oh, I meant to mask that. Hang on one second. Luckily, it was the high performers at top, so it wasn't terrible. So in the academic challenge, the percentile charts are going to show you in what percentile of different categories these schools fall. And so what's interesting, if you go to chart options, you can choose, who do I want to compare to? Do I want to compare to other Florida schools, rural, suburban, charter, large size? So I'm going to say none just for the sake of this discussion. And then I look at all of the subgroup breakdowns. So do I want to see questions by school? So if you clicked school, it would show all the schools, but with their names. For right now, I'm using school masked. And so, for example, now you can see every secondary school's results. If you chose just school, you would see your school names. I know how you guys are. And then same thing with, let's say, free and reduced lunch. I want to look at these questions by free and reduced lunch. Students who identify as free of a yes, I am, and those who aren't. I can look at gender identity. Students were able to choose whether they identified female, male, or in another way. Race, ethnicity, you get the idea. You can look at it in every single question in every cluster. Some of the interesting ones are learning models, meaning are you doing virtual, in-person, or both? Students were prompted to select both if at some point in time they had done virtual in the school year. And then COVID effect. So this is an interesting category. So this is looking at responses by whether a student reports that COVID has impacted them a lot or a little. And do we have a difference in all those other responses based on it? So as you can see, this slide deck could have been 200 slides long because there's so many different combinations of data that you can look at. So I just wanted to make sure you were aware those options were there. If you want to change by questions, you can do it right here as well and click, all right, I want to look at by school for this question, and it's going to show me that data. And that's why I encourage you to use that aggregate report, because you can literally see every school's responses there. And so moving on, at academic challenge percent positives. So the percent positive reports look like, all right, how many percentage of students responded positively? So I used a lot of percent positive reports in your data. So I don't want to see that weird percentile number. Maybe that doesn't connect to me. I just want to know how many, students felt positive. And then again, you can go down to whatever subgroup you want. So here for this question, I might look at free and reduced lunch rates. The students who are on free and reduced lunch respond differently to those who are. And again, I can go to self-reported grades. So at a quick click, you can see all the different groups of students and their response patterns, and even right down to the different schools. I'm going to choose school mask. So this would allow me to go through all the high school responses from the highest to the lowest. You can bet your bottom dollar that we have done that on all the questions. And we've had lots of one-on-one conferences to really highlight some of the areas that concern us that are maybe particular outliers for a school. If a school is disproportionately low, we'll have a conversation. But if a school is disproportionately high, we want to have that conversation as well. And so throughout those percent positives, you can look at each question. And then this last cluster is a distribution. What was the student's pattern of responses? So how many said strongly agree, disagree? And so for each set of questions, you can look at it either by percentile, percentage positive, or by distribution, and then some additional bar charts. You can go specifically to our diversity, equity, and inclusion questions. Those are a new category for this year, and look at the same thing. There's a lot of questions there, so you see those clustered in thirds. And again, many different categories and combinations, but you can change, no matter what, you can change the chart up here by choosing those disaggregated groups, or you can do it right underneath the chart. And so I just wanted to make sure you guys were empowered a little to click through. It's a little quirky, but it's amazing. I do have to emphasize, we get our data a week and a half after the survey closes. So it's intended to be actionable for us to look at it and be responsive to it. Any questions about accessing this and using it? Lena's your one-stop shop. I know she has set up many of you guys already, but she can get you squared away.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So I apologize. I've looked at it just like as schools as whole, so I really haven't manipulated. I can't see it on my screen, and I can kind of make out what's on there. But there's no surprise of some of the conversations we're going to be having later tonight. So one of the questions I have is, can we aggregate the data for sexual orientation by any chance, just because of some of the questions that were on?
Yeah, so and any of the questions only in secondary. So
Right.
It wasn't an identifier we did for elementary.
Right.
And so, for example, we could look at gender identity, but I want to be specific. It tells you which students responded which way, but it doesn't necessarily tell you It just tells you that students identify in a different way. Does that make sense? So the students select female, male, or identify in a different way.
Got it. So there was no sexual orientation question, just gender.
That was as specific as they asked it. It is an option
Okay.
to add in, and we can certainly look at adding that in next year. But for this year, we kept it the same as last year.
Okay.
That's what I thought.
I'm legitimately just asking just for
Yeah,
for
no,
tonight's
good
sake.
questions. No,
Okay.
and listen, I think every time something confronts us, we use all available data sources.
Right,
So
right.
I really appreciate that philosophy. So I want to move on to this little backpack on the screen. Did you guys ever get to see your screens or no? Okay, perfect. So there's a little backpack in the top right, and I'm going to click on it. In my opinion, that little click is the most important part of this toolkit, because it's all about empowering our school leaders to use this data. And that's what is important. I'm actually going to go from the right to the left. Close the feedback loop is the first set of directions that we've given our principals, meaning you have gotten this data from your students. How are you going to honor that they gave it to you? How are you going to share, celebrate, or even talk about ones that are important to you? So, of course, they're doing school improvement meetings. They're doing it in their school improvement plan. But we want to see a more robust honoring of the data. And in this link here, there is a ton of feedback and tools and preset forms to put it out there. A school, you know those ones where I did that was just the circle with the 53%? They could put that out on their Facebook one day. 53% of our students are this. We're working on that. We want them sharing it loud and proud. So as you can see, there are templates and decks and pre-done formats for Canva, for Twitter, for making the slides ready to go. They have templates for posters. They can print the posters for their schools and really let their students know, you said this and it matters. And so we'll be doing some small group discussions and things like that, but we want students to be very visual. These are posters that are ready to be made, scripts for sharing the results. All our principals have been trained in all of these resources to close that feedback loop. We asked you this is what you told us. And maybe it's a few questions here or there, right? The parents and nobody's going to sit through the 2 hours I'm putting you guys through. But do little bits of, once a week honoring the data, putting it out there on Facebook. And you know what? Share the good and share the struggle. Be okay in saying, as a school, we're not doing as well as these other schools. Tell me what we can do to make your experience better, and have those conversations with children. So as you can see, all of these templates are right there, easy to click, easy to access. And again, I think that's one of the most powerful parts. When you click on Plan for School Improvement, this is a really cool little section here because it has research on how you can improve these areas. So if I look at secondary and I look at relationships, to Ms. McDougall's point, I can click on it and I can see a list of questions and activities that are available available right to you. And so then you can click on tools, and it's giving you some research and information and articles on it and how to use it for action planning. And so it's clicking the school administrator directly into some resources on maybe this one area we want to work on. I'm going to click here. I'm going to look at recommended strategies and approaches and what are some best practices and what does research tell me that is effective in improving this area. Setting goals is also pretty cool. I love a driver diagram. They always make me really happy. And you'll see some matrices and taking some tools, and it gives you directions to run the protocol. So maybe you take a driver tool, you talk about why more of our students don't say an adult, they can reach out to an adult, and it takes you through a protocol to do with your faculty and staff and or parents. And so it gives you all of the tools at your fingerprints to do the action planning. They use the CASTLE framework in understanding how to impact change. And again, all the resources are there. So I knew that as board members, okay, we have this great data, what next? Every principal's been trained in this. Many of our directors in the other divisions join that training. And our directors are now doing small group follow-up with the principals. So we will absolutely honor the feedback our students give us, and there's lots of different tools in order to do that.
And I would add that it just doesn't end with training them on the tools. They must use the tools, they must use the data in their school improvement plan. Every principal, every school works with their faculty, their students, their school advisory council to identify and prioritize those areas. They can't tackle it all, but they prioritize, okay, what do we need to do as a school? And what's awesome about that resource, like Dr. Sullivan said, is they don't have to go trying to research where do we start on their own. The research-based supports are already there built into the resources we have from the company.
And the conversation and collegiality amongst the principals is incredible, and they are a really big source for us on how to improve outcomes, especially when we can see, you know, I know this school focused on this last year, and they were so excited to click it and see the result that they improved. That's the energy we want, and those, like for me, college and career readiness, okay, we've done a lot, we're not done yet, and so kind of keep working at it. So that's the energy that we hope to spread throughout the district and valuing student feedback.
It's phenomenal. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Super excited, not only with the data that we have, but with the process that we have in place to make sure that we're owning that data and making changes based on it. So
thank you.
Love it, love it, love it. Anybody else have anything for Dr. Sullivan or Ms. Weibelt? All right, thank you.
Thank you all very much. Appreciate your time.
And anyone have any additional business we need to discuss prior to adjournment?
I just want to jump off of that sources of strength comment, and you know that BFT is focusing on adding some more, but I just want to share with my experience. I know that a lot of schools really like that program. I know the students really like the program. They're saying it's really effective. I know a lot of those the teachers that are supporting that program were struggling pre-COVID. That it's a lot of work, it's a lot of time. And so it just to keep in the forefront of your mind, thinking about possibly adding a supplement or some sort for someone who's hosting that program, because it's really effective, it's really important, and it's really the only way that they're going to run efficiently and effectively.
Thank you. Anything else? All right, hearing nothing further, we are adjourned.